Hey everybody, welcome back to Self-Help Witch. I'm Dana. I am an astrologer, a teacher, a witch, a bad bitch, if you will, and I will. Today, I want to talk to you about something a little different. Typically on my channel, I'm talking more technical stuff, more what's going on with the astrological weather, and this is about that, but I actually want to tell you about my birthday. I had a birthday on March 13th. I turned 36. I'm feeling really good about it, but you might also know that on March 14th, and in some parts of the world it was March 13th, there was also a full moon eclipse in Virgo. That eclipse perfected hours after my solar return, which is when the sun returns to the same spot the sun is at in your birth chart, in other words, your birthday. They happen within very close proximity of one another. And I had a pretty profound experience that I want to share with you. One, because I think it's really helpful to share reflections on astrology. When you can see astrology manifest in someone's life in a tangible way, it becomes a very helpful learning opportunity. So my hope is that sharing this with you will, one, help you understand the archetypes that are at play, and not just with that eclipse, but with the South Node in Virgo, with the North Node in Pisces. And then also, I think it's helpful to see that you can have a scary looking transit like an eclipse on your birthday and everything's okay. And in fact, it was actually pretty useful. So I'm not only going to talk about my birthday and what happened for me, but I'm also going to talk about what I think might be coming up for all 12 signs, for all 12 rising signs, with the nodes in Pisces and Virgo. So let's get into it. To start this off, I want to show you the chart of the moment with my birth chart, just to point out a couple of things about what was happening and give some context before we dive into what actually happened in my material life. So obviously the sun is at the same place as my natal sun. That's what a solar return is. That's what happens on your birthday astrologically. You can see that the eclipse is going to happen just a few hours later. So let me go ahead and put the eclipse on the chart. Actually, there we go. Okay. So the sun is at 23:56 and my sun is at 23:28. So pretty damn close. And this also means that the South Node is opposing my sun within a 3-degree range, but then the moon was opposing my sun in my 12th house. Now, as an astrologer, I saw that and went, okay, what's going to happen? And look, astrologers are not immune to astrological anxiety. In fact, I think we're a little more susceptible when you know enough to be dangerous, or more than enough to be dangerous, and you're so close to your own life or the life of someone you love, and you see something like this. It's easy to get carried away and worried about what's going to happen. And of course, Uranus is in the mix with this eclipse as well. It's in my 8th house. So I'm wondering, especially too with Saturn approaching a conjunction with my sun, I was really worried about someone dying. And my mind went there because I was anxious. And I'm bringing this up just to reinforce the fact that our mind does go to the worst case scenario when we see a transit that we think might be hard. Almost never is your worst case scenario, the first thought you think, especially if you're an anxious person, going to be what actually happens. So now let me tell you what actually happened. Now, I don't have notes for this. I'm just going to tell you what happened like we're friends sitting down for coffee. So let's back it up to March 12th. On March 12th, there was a Saturn cazimi. This is where the sun and Saturn are in the same place in the sky. They're conjunct. And my experience of the sun-Saturn cazimi was despair. I was extremely sad. You saw my chart. I have a lot of Pisces placements. I cry on a regular basis. Okay, like I would say once a week I shed a tear or two. It doesn't take a lot to make me cry. I'm a sensitive person. However, I don't want to use the term compose myself because I don't think it's like, you don't always need to compose yourself, but normally I can get myself back together pretty quickly. There was something about March 12th that had me so sad. And to the point where in the morning I was crying in my car for 20 minutes before I walked into work because I could not get myself together. I was just that sad. I walked into my office and my office mate immediately goes, "Hey, are you okay? I've noticed you've been a little sad lately." And I burst into tears all over again. And he was great. He was so nice and helpful. But in talking to him, I was like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what the root of this sadness is. I did know, and I didn't tell him then, but I did know that it wasn't new. This is a sadness that has been lingering, but I've been able to compartmentalize, I think is the word. Been able to ignore, not pay attention to. Oh, this too shall pass. That's normally what I'm really good at. But that sadness was just front and center and would not go away. And I didn't know where it was coming from or why it was heavily present. So I'm sad all day long. And then the evening comes, and there are some things that I'm not going to get into too many details about just because it's like a little personal, a little private, but essentially there was a separate conversation that happened later in the evening where I realized what the root of that sadness was. And it's really rooted for me, or at least in that day, my big aha moment was, I am sad because I feel like people aren't thinking about me. I feel like I'm not cared about. Something about me is I'm usually the rock for other people. I'm the one that people come to and trust. There are people who would do that for me, but I haven't let them do that for me because I don't want to impose. And so I don't really communicate about my feelings. I don't share when I'm sad or angry, mostly because I just feel like I'll deal with it on my own. There's no one I really need to tell about this. But on that day, I realized how much of a disservice I was doing to myself, and that a lot of that was actually me not being honest about how I'm feeling because I am afraid of affecting the relationship in a negative way. I'm afraid of asking for help. I'm afraid of reaching out to people and saying, hey, I'm suffering, I'm struggling. Do you want to get together? I don't do that. And what it felt like on that day is no one's thinking about me. I'm over here so sad, and I feel like I don't even have anyone to talk to because everyone's caught up in their own shit and no one's thinking about me. I just kept coming back to that idea. No one's thinking about me. And then I started thinking about the astrology of the moment. The moon in my 12th house, the south node in my 12th house. We know the 12th house is a blind spot, right? It's a place where things are just below our conscious awareness. And if we're not attentive to that, if we don't take the time to try to understand what's going on there, it can defeat us. It can self-sabotage. It can just get in the way of what we're trying to do and who we're trying to be. And I understood once I connected the dots of what was happening with me on that day to the astrology of the moment, which at that time was the day before this eclipse. I was like, oh, this is a 12th house moment. This is helping me understand the way in which I'm trying to control an outcome, which is, in this case, like, not be a burden in my relationships. I'm undermining my own best interest. That is textbook 12th house. And I understood in that moment the letting go energy of the South Node in Virgo for me personally, and it might be for you too, especially if you're a Libra Rising, is about surrender in a very general, broad sense. And for me, it's like a surrender of how you really feel. Let's be real about this. I need help. I need support. I need to feel loved. I need to be loved the way I want to feel loved. And I hadn't allowed myself to be honest about that. So it took this eclipse moment to really bring it to the surface. And what's really interesting and really beautiful about this actually is obviously the next day was my birthday. So the 12th was the day of like total despair and sadness, but major breakthroughs and clarity, major realizations. And then the next day, my birthday, people reached out to me, right? Like I saw in real time how my fear, 12th house shit, was not true. There are people thinking about me, who care about me, who love me, who want me to succeed, who would be so sad to know that I'm just sitting here suffering and not reaching out to them. Like I'm tearing up even thinking about it because I'm putting myself in their shoes. If someone I loved was having a hard time and I found out later, I would be so sad. Like, why didn't you call me? Why didn't you text me? It was a major breakthrough in the necessity, the absolute necessity of being honest about how you feel, first and foremost with yourself, but also with other people. And not just how you feel, but what you need. And I was able to articulate that in this moment. And I credit the 12th house eclipse for that illumination of the moon in the 12th from my sun and from the transiting sun really reflected this truth about myself back to me in such an empowering and transformative way. I felt like I gained so much just in that 12-hour period of time. Such a new level of freedom in how I show up. The larger lesson in this moment, it's not just about relationships. It's not just about my personal life. I also understood how this is showing up in all areas of my life. How being afraid to be honest with yourself and then with others is a recipe for disaster. And you know what else I credit in this setup is Saturn. Saturn, the planet of let's get fucking real about this. Let's call this what it is. Let's be honest. I think that the sadness and the despair and the heartache, really, the heartache that Saturn brought to this party, if you want to call it a party, was so necessary. Because if I hadn't gotten there, I wouldn't have had that breakthrough. I also think Saturn was really helpful in this moment because it gave me that outsider perspective. Saturn is the original outsider. It was the furthest planet away before the modern planets were discovered, and it represents being separate. That's why it thrives or finds its joy in the 12th house. Now, Saturn, of course, wasn't in the 12th house for me. It was in my 6th house, but it was very close to my natal sun. And its role in this 24-hour period was helping me understand how I set my own self apart, how I separated my own self, and the illusion that created that no one cared about me. Because Saturn is also the planet, and this is something that's not talked about frequently because it's more of an ancient signification, but it is the planet of like false pretenses. Like it can signify deceit. So it's interesting that like these 12th house Saturnine themes are what allowed me to get that clarity and awareness. And there's the cazimi of it all, because what a cazimi or a conjunction with the sun does is it illuminates. It gives like that solar conscious awareness to the planet that's receiving the cazimi. So here I was able to get awareness around how I set my own self apart and the illusion that created that no one was caring about me. It's major. So what I want to do now is talk a little more generally about the South Node in Virgo through the houses. Let's take a look at the chart and talk about what you might be releasing and letting go, thinking about where Virgo lands in your chart. Here we go. So these are going to be quick and dirty horoscopes, all right? We're not spending a million years getting into this, but I want you to get a feel for what you might be releasing and letting go based on where the South Node in Virgo is in your chart. We're going to start with our Aries friends. The South Node is in your 6th house. The 6th house is the joy of Mars. It's where we fight for what we want, and also where we can maybe suffer needlessly. So I think what you have the potential for letting go of is the need to make things harder than they need to be, or maybe not the need to make things harder than they need to be, but the capacity, the propensity to make things harder than they need to be. One of the big lessons of the 6th house for me as a person with a lot of important placements in the 6th is letting go, is surrender. And I think that's so beautiful with Virgo here too. We know the South Node is a point of release and of shedding and minimizing, of lessening. And if we're thinking about the energy of the 6th being that of like effort and fighting, and there's certainly a place for effort in fighting. What the South Node can do, though, is help you release the grip on the need to fight where fighting is not helpful, where trying to muscle your way through it is not going to be beneficial to you or the people in your life. So I like that for Aries Risings, where you're learning maybe you don't need to fight so hard. You can relax into it and actually get better results. Okay. Taurus Risings, that's going to put the South Node in Virgo in the 5th house. And this is an interesting one because if we're thinking about the fifth house as the place of creativity, of what you make and what you offer to the world, with Virgo here, it makes me wonder about, and I hate to bring in a stereotype here, I'm going to use the word perfectionism. Here's the thing. This is a part of the Virgo experience, but perfectionism is not always a bad thing. That's a term that gets thrown around willy-nilly, especially when we're talking about Virgo. There is a beauty to that. There is a beauty to having such attention to the detail. But I think in a best case scenario for Taurus risings, what the South Node can do is help you loosen the grip on the outcome or the final project. I wonder about undermining the things we want to do, what we want to create with our lives, whether that's creating art or like that's a very specific way of thinking about the fifth house, right? I think that of the fifth as more of what you create with your life and with what you have, like what you go out and offer the world. And there might be a way in which you stop yourself short in what you create sometimes, like a propensity to be precious with your work. I think the South Node in Virgo can help you let go of that. Surrender to the outcome of what will be. I think too about Taurus being a Venus ruled sign of how there's probably a need for your work and what you make to be received in a certain way by other people. So there's a lot of thought about how other people will receive what you're making and creating, whether that's something you're physically creating, whether that's your children, whether that's the life you're living and what you're doing for fun. You, I think with this transit, are going to learn how to let go of that a little bit. That's my hope for you. Okay, Gemini risings, we've got Virgo in the fourth with the South Node here. So I am thinking a little bit about releasing the need to feel tethered in one place. That might sound weird, but we're thinking about the fourth house as the place of home, family, and where you feel safe and secure. And that may be what you thought you needed to feel safe and secure has been outgrown or is no longer working for you. That this particular way of doing things in your interior life, in your home life, so I'm talking not just about your physical home, but I'm also talking about inside. I think that you might be finding you're very hard on yourself and you don't need to be. That is not always helpful and is actually an obstacle. So what the South Node can teach you here is how to let your intuition lead the way without having it all figured out. Because I think as a Mercury ruled sign, Gemini risings, you like a plan. You like to know A, B, and C. Here's how it's happening. And it's a very general statement because you could have all kinds of other stuff going on in your chart. But having the South Node move through another Mercury ruled sign, I think is giving you a sense of expansiveness in like just being present with what is and letting yourself find safety and comfort in that instead of having to have things be just so to feel good in your space and in your body. That puts Cancer on the ascendant next. So Cancer risings, Virgo's in your third house. The South Node is in your third house. I'm thinking about changing the way that you go about your day. So that kind of intuitive approach to life being a part of the Virgo South Node in the third house experience for you. The third house is the joy of the moon. And it's a place where like we do the things we do daily, like the place of our rituals, the things that we do on a regular basis, the things that feel comfortable and natural and routine and a part of our immediate environment. So the South Node moving through this part of your chart, I think is helping you see how things could shift in the way that you've always done things. So there's a looking at the way we've always done things and a reassessment of if we need to be so rigid about that, if we need to pay so much attention to the steps and how things are done. Something as simple as like on Saturdays we clean, which is a thing for a lot of people. And actually a really good idea. Saturn's today, great day to clean. But you might be realizing that routine is not working for you anymore. You'd rather use your Saturday mornings to go to the farmer's market. And you're learning to let go of the need to be so precise about how things work. What's the structure? What's the routine? What's the, like, how the gears turn in the clock of your life. For Leo risings, the South Node is going to be in your second house. And I think this is really cool because this is you learning that you don't have to, this is maybe a little odd, but what's coming to me right now is you don't have to prove to anybody what you have to offer. I think you might be going through it currently and in the last several months because of Mars in your 12th house. And there might be a question of confidence for you guys right now, for you Leo risings. And what this South Node, I think, can help you do is open up to a new way of using what you have, using your resources, and showing yourself in the process, like what you really have to offer. In other words, I think you might be in a place right now where you might be feeling really bad about yourself. You might have some low self-worth going on right now and feeling like, I don't really know what's next for me. I think the South Node in your second house is saying, hey, you know what? There's other options. Like, we don't have to do things exactly like this. I have other things I can offer, right? Now, you could look at this and say, on a very surface level, a lessening or a decrease in resources. And look, that is a possibility. I just want to be real. Like, that's a possibility with this archetypal combination in this part of your chart. At the same time, and this is where I'm going to bring in the North Node and Pisces, that might be because you're leaning on people. The 8th house, the house of merging, the house of transformation, of death and rebirth. You are learning to lean on people right now, I think, and have them reflect back to you what is so brilliant and beautiful about you. So you are letting go of needing to prove yourself, maybe, and embracing the way other people can embrace you, and learning how to trust in that if you let other people in, you will be well received. I think that can be hard for Leo risings. All right, Virgo risings, I'm really excited for you because this is in your first house. And I'm not going to talk about the stereotypes again, but I will say your attention to detail is a superpower. It's what makes you, you. And it's funny because the Virgo people I know, there's this I said I wasn't going to talk about stereotypes, but the stereotype of Virgo rising is that they're this like really organized, clean. I'm sure there are Virgo risings like this. The Virgo people I know are the messiest people I know. And they're collectors. They have a ton of shit. They have, like, the guy I share my office with is a Virgo sun. Probably has other Virgo placements. I've never looked at his chart. But if you saw our office, it's hilarious because on his side, literally the entire wall is covered with stuff. It's covered with art, with student stuff, things kids have made for him. It's really cool. With little action figures he collects. And my side is not that at all. You can tell immediately that he's got Virgo energy because that's how it is for Virgos. They revel in the details. And everything is placed just so, right? Like, it's not a mess. It's an organized mess. Everything is where it should be. Okay, so what I'm trying to say for you Virgo risings, I got a little off tangent there, but the South Node can help you let go of projections other people put on you, right? Because it's helping you clear out something in your identity and your self-concept. Who am I really? Who can I be really? Who do I want to be really? And releasing beliefs and identities that are not true for you anymore. I think that it can be scary to do that. So I want to just put that out there and say this can be an intense time. Like, this eclipse has come and gone by this point, but you got a lot going on. You got this pile up of planets in your 7th house, and I could definitely see there being a bit of an identity crisis here of there's a lot going on with my partners. There's a lot going on with work. Who am I in all of this? Who do I want to be in all of this? You get to decide right now, and you get to consciously let go of the roles you play that are not working for you and the identities that you no longer wish to keep. And I am excited for you because I think that's really powerful. Libra Risings, I already talked about my experience here, so I'll spare you that again, but I think that we have a really beautiful opportunity to clear out the cobwebs in our subconscious, to bring what's unknown to the known, and to use that to up level. I hate to use like these hierarchical words because it's not about like just ascension, right? It's a spiralic labyrinth, growing and healing and all of that. We know that. But there is a lot of freedom to be found, I think, with the South Node in the 12th house, because you start to understand and make conscious, as I demonstrated in the story I told you guys, the things that have been keeping you from being your best. As a Libra rising, I need to feel loved. Like, we all need that, of course, but like, I need connection. And I need to know people are thinking about me. I just need it. And I was a little bit like, there was a part of me that was ashamed of that. That, oh, I don't want to need people. I don't need them. That's been a thing for me for a long time. And we could talk a long time about that and where that all came from. But the point is, the South Node can help you put those pieces together and give language to it. And that's back to the idea that this is a Mercury ruled sign. I think the South Node is going to give us language in its time in Virgo to help us understand what can be released here. And so for Libra risings, I think we have a really great opportunity to make life more aligned with what we really want by getting honest with ourselves and being able to articulate what's really going on behind the scenes. My Scorpio peeps, Scorpio rising, your South Node or the South Node is going to be in your 11th house. I really like this as clearing out the groups that no longer align. I think that with the Mars retrograde and Mars in Cancer saga that's been going on for the last several months, there's been a lot of recalibration around like, what matters to me? What's important to me? What do I value? Where am I going? Where do I want to go? Especially because Mars is your planet. So the South Node in the 11th is saying to me, you might be separating from some groups that you've been a part of. This might be the start of kind of a different direction for you, maybe different ambitions as well. You're realizing the thing you thought you really wanted is really not what you want anymore. The thing you were striving for is not worth it at this time. And on the other side of this, we've got all this energy in your 5th house. So I don't want you to be like worried when you hear this, right? When you hear, oh, I'm going to change my mind about the things I've been working hard on. Maybe, but the other part of that you have to consider is there is a groundswell of creativity coming through right now. Like, you are really focused in on what you want to make and what you want to create. So I don't think this letting go is going to be as painful as you might be worried it's going to be. I think it's going to happen pretty naturally, where you see that you're going in a new direction creatively with your life and how you're living, as well as with your vision and your values, which is all 9th house stuff. And you naturally find yourself going in different directions when it comes to the groups you're a part of and your ambitions, your dreams. And I think that's a good thing. So it's a healthy recalibration for you. My Sag risings, this has been and is going to continue to be until June of 2026 in your 11th or your 10th house, excuse me. So this is a clearing of who you are out in the world, realizing maybe that a role you've been playing in your public life and your work life is no longer a fit. It doesn't feel good anymore. And there's something going on at home that's bringing this up. I'm thinking about a Sag rising I know who has a young child, and there's a lot of responsibility at home right now with their kids. And also, work's been a grind. Work's been tough. And this was before the South Node ever moved into Virgo, but like that backdrop leading into this and over the next year and a half, I think is informing what we're up against. There's a need to change or shift in career and in how you're showing up publicly. So be thinking about what that might mean for you and how you want to navigate this, because you don't have to quit your job. That's obviously something that can happen. I think you just want to be noticing, like, where am I feeling called to shift in the way I'm showing up in work? Maybe you want a different role within the company you're in. Maybe you want to delegate a little bit. That's a great manifestation of the South Node in Virgo in the 10th. Learning how to let go of the need to do it all yourself. Because you don't. You don't. All right, Cap Risings. We've got Virgo in the 9th house. This is what's coming to me right now. Thinking about this is like letting go of the beliefs. This is like deep belief work, deep philosophy work. What are my core operating principles? This is a phrase I always use for the 9th house. And the South Node here is, here's what is not working for me anymore. Here are the beliefs that I've been making choices and decisions based upon that actually I don't want to keep anymore. I'm ready to compost that. And then on the other side of that, you've got all this energy in your 3rd house. So to me, that says there's something about your daily life that like you're having to surrender to. There might be some challenges in your day-to-day, like something as simple and stupid as there's construction on your route to work. And so you have to take a different way. But you might realize in doing that like you pass maybe a farm and you're like, actually, a farm would be cool. Like, this is such a random example, but you get the gist of what I'm saying, that there's some challenge in your daily life or in your environment that's bringing up deeper questions of what really matters to you. And you get to refine what really matters to you while the South Node is here in Virgo. And let those challenges be an invitation for that reflection, right? This is how we approach astrology mindfully, is we don't wait for the shoe to drop, which, look, we all do, right? No shade, no judgment. But like when you catch yourself doing that, that's your cue. All right, I need to tap into what good can come from this, because there's always good that can come from this. All right. That's my caps. Now we're on to our Aqua Risings. We've got the South Node in the 8th house. So this is a release, a shedding, a letting go of needing to be in partnership, of fear, potentially, and of transformation too. It's interesting because you've got Pluto in your 1st house now and for a long time. So that's, I think, taking precedent over most other things in your chart. And of course, it depends on what your actual birth chart looks like. But from a purely transit point of view, this might be a little more undetected. Or anything that this South Node is bringing up, it may feel more like Pluto, honestly, because what Pluto is doing is bringing in a transformation of your identity in a sentence. The South Node in your 8th house, I'm thinking about letting go of partnerships that are outdated, agreements, contracts, shedding those ways that you're merging with people, letting go of those things that are no longer aligned with who you are discovering yourself to be. When we consider all of the energy on the other side of the chart in your 2nd house, I really get the sense that you are being called to lean into what you can do on your own. This is a moment where you are having to act independently and do things by yourself. And that can be hard, right? But what it can also do is prove to you that you can do it. And it can teach you all that you have to offer, all of your talents, your resources that you didn't even know you had. So I think part of this for you is trusting that you have them, trusting that you have the skills to go and do whatever it is you need to go and do. And that trust and that surrender is going to give you the courage to walk away from partnerships that maybe you felt like you needed and you actually don't. You've outgrown them. Last but not least, we got Pisces on the ascendant. Y'all, you have been really like adulting hard, right? You got Saturn in your 1st house. And so the South Node is in your 7th. I think it's a similar thing of what we were just saying for Aqua Risings, that there's maybe a need to rely on yourself here. Thinking about Saturn, thinking about the North Node in Pisces, you have really had to lean on yourself over these last, 2 or so years since March of 23, when Saturn entered Pisces, you've had to learn how to take care of yourself, how to pull up your bootstraps and do what you need to do. And it might have been very isolating. You might have felt like you had to do a lot alone. And this is underscoring for me that that's not over, but it doesn't have to be sad or scary. I think by now you could probably see the good that Saturn can bring in your first house, while challenging, while constricting, while hard. Straight up, it can be hard. It teaches you what you're capable of. Saturn shows you what can be possible. It shows you what can be possible when you move through your fear. So I think you've learned a lot about what it means to be you and taking responsibility for yourself in all the myriad ways we are called to do that. And the South Node in Virgo is saying, let go, maybe of needing to control other people. That feels more like a Venus ruled thing for me, but that is coming up for me right now as we're talking about this. Maybe it's letting go of having the perfect outcome or like the perfect situation with a partner. Again, thinking about the meticulousness of Virgo and the South Node being here, it's like, where can we let go and just, you know what it is? This is really what I'm thinking about. You need to believe, Pisces Risings, that you are enough in relationship. Okay, and I think what this South Node in the 7th house is going to do is show you that you can let go. And when you do that, your partners will prove that you are enough. They will show you that you're enough without you having to play a role for them, without you having to try. You don't have to try to be loved. Period. And the South Node in your 7th house, I think, has the propensity and the capacity to show you that when you let go of needing to control the way people perceive you, really beautiful connection can happen. Yeah. So we did it. That's what I'm thinking about. I hope this was helpful. Let me know what resonates for you. I publish this on my Substack, Ask an Astrologer, as well as on my YouTube channel. If you're on YouTube, leave me a comment. Let me know what resonates for you, what you're worried about, what you're thinking about, what questions you have. And I hope that the rest of this eclipse season is just magical for you and that it gives you the clarity and the awareness and the new insights that you're looking for and that you need. We are turning a page astrologically, especially in April. We are really moving out of the quagmire of the first 3 months that Mars in Cancer has been all about, that Jupiter in Gemini has been all about, and things are starting to pick up steam. So now is the time to really sit in reflection with that, and I hope this helped you to do that. See you later.